Don't embarrass yourself, Marcus. The words were soft enough to sound caring. They were cruel enough to silence an entire ballroom. More than 400 guests stopped talking inside the Grand Regency Hotel in downtown Chicago. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above them, while cameras from business magazines captured what was supposed to be the happiest night of billionaire Marcus Hartwell's return to public life. Instead, everyone watched a man in a wheelchair grip its armrests so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His fiancée, Cecilia Ashcroft, rested one elegant hand on his shoulder. "You've had a difficult year," she continued, with a sympathetic smile meant for the audience, not for him. "Please, let the staff handle everything." The room nodded. She sounded loving. She sounded protective. Only Marcus noticed how firmly her fingers pressed into his shoulder, silently forcing him back into the chair. Near the edge of the ballroom stood Elena, one of the household maids who had spent the last 8 months quietly helping at Hartwell Manor. She lowered her eyes. She had seen that smile before. Beside her, hidden behind the folds of her mother's black uniform, 3-year-old Lily clutched a tiny silver compass with a cracked glass face. The old compass had belonged to Marcus's late father. No one understood why the little girl refused to let go of it. Then Lily suddenly tugged her mother's sleeve. "I have to tell Mr. Marcus." Elena gently shook her head. "Not now, sweetheart." But children didn't understand timing. They only understood honesty. Lily slipped away before anyone could stop her. Her tiny shoes made almost no sound across the polished marble floor. She reached Marcus's wheelchair just as Cecilia leaned closer for another carefully rehearsed photograph. The little girl placed the cracked silver compass into Marcus's palm. Then she stood on tiptoe. Her tiny whisper barely reached his ear. "Your fiancée said she hopes your legs never work again." Marcus didn't move. He couldn't. For one endless second, every sound inside the ballroom disappeared. Not because everyone had heard the child, because Marcus had. His heartbeat thundered louder than the orchestra. The compass trembled in his hand. It wasn't only the child's words. It was the object. That compass had vanished from his private study 2 weeks earlier. Only 4 people even knew it existed. Marcus slowly lifted his eyes toward Cecilia. She smiled for another camera. Perfect. Graceful. Untouchable. Yet for the first time since the accident, Marcus noticed something he should have seen months ago. She never looked at him. She only looked at the audience watching them. Across the room, one member of Hartwell Industries' board quietly frowned. Another lowered his champagne glass. A third reached for his phone but stopped. Nobody understood why Marcus suddenly looked as though the floor beneath the ballroom had disappeared. Nobody knew that one innocent sentence had just shattered the last lie holding his future together. Cecilia noticed the compass. For the briefest fraction of a second, her smile faltered. Then it returned. Too quickly. Too perfectly. She bent toward Marcus and whispered through smiling teeth, "After tonight, everyone will finally stop expecting miracles." Most guests assumed she meant his recovery. Marcus wasn't so sure anymore, because buried beneath her perfume was another scent. Hospital disinfectant. The same unfamiliar fragrance that had lingered outside his rehabilitation room on the night someone quietly cancelled an extra week of physical therapy without telling him. At the time, he believed it was a clerical mistake. Now, nothing felt accidental. Across the ballroom, Elena finally reached Lily, panic filling her face. "I'm so sorry, sir," she whispered. "My daughter shouldn't interrupt." Marcus gently raised one hand. "No." His voice remained calm, almost frighteningly calm. She did exactly what she was supposed to do. No one understood what he meant. Not yet. But before the night was over, one engagement would never recover. One carefully built public image would begin to crack. And one woman who believed a wheelchair guaranteed her future would discover that she had made the most expensive mistake of her life. But to understand why one frightened toddler and one cracked silver compass were about to destroy everything Cecilia Ashcroft had spent years building, we need to go back to the day Marcus Hartwell believed surviving the accident was the hardest battle he would ever face. 7 months earlier, long before that whisper in the ballroom, long before the cracked silver compass found its way back into his hand, Marcus Hartwell believed he had already lost everything that mattered. Every morning at precisely 6:15, the sun crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Hartwell Manor overlooking Lake Michigan on Chicago's North Shore. The house was breathtaking, designed with polished limestone towering columns and priceless artwork collected over 3 generations. To Marcus, it had never felt emptier. His day always began the same way, a quiet knock. Then Elena entered carrying a tray with black coffee oatmeal medication and a folded newspaper. She never pitied him. She never spoke louder than necessary, never rushed to move his wheelchair before asking, and never pretended his pain wasn't real. "Good morning, Mr. Hartwell." "Morning, Elena." Some mornings were easier than others. Most weren't. The accident had happened 9 months earlier on Interstate 90 during a freezing November rainstorm. A freight truck had jackknifed across 3 lanes. Marcus survived. His closest friend and longtime chief financial officer did not. The surgeons saved Marcus's life. They could not promise he would ever walk again. Every headline called him lucky. Marcus never felt lucky. After breakfast, Elena helped arrange the rehabilitation equipment inside the private therapy room overlooking the gardens. Metal parallel bars, elastic resistance bands, a treadmill equipped with a body support harness. Everything smelled faintly of rubber antiseptic and determination. The therapists always arrived at 8. Marcus insisted on beginning 15 minutes early, not because anyone expected him to, because his father had taught him one lesson that never left him. If you're going to lose, William Hartwell used to say, lose knowing you exhausted every honest chance to win. That sentence echoed through Marcus's mind every single morning. Sometimes he repeated it aloud while sweat rolled down his forehead. Sometimes he repeated it because his legs refused to answer him. There were days when standing for 12 seconds felt like climbing a mountain. There were days when even 6 seconds seemed impossible. He never stopped trying. Not once. After therapy, he wheeled himself into the old library. Most people expected the billionaire to spend his afternoons studying market reports or negotiating acquisitions. Instead, Marcus opened worn notebooks filled with handwritten ideas his father had left behind. Business principles, personal reflections, tiny reminders written in blue fountain pen. Tucked between those pages rested a silver compass no larger than his palm. Its glass was cracked. Its needle still pointed north. William Hartwell had carried it while building the family's first construction company with only 2 employees and 1 borrowed pickup truck. When people lose direction, his father often said, placing the compass into young Marcus's hands, they don't need luck. They need something that reminds them who they are. Marcus kept it close even after becoming one of America's youngest billionaires, not because it was valuable, because it wasn't. Its worth came from memory. No insurance company could calculate that. One rainy Tuesday, Marcus reached into the drawer where the compass always rested. His hand touched nothing. He searched again, then again. The drawer was empty. He frowned, but said nothing. Perhaps he'd moved it after physical therapy. Perhaps someone cleaning the study had placed it elsewhere. It wasn't worth troubling anyone, or so he believed. Outside the study window, little Lily chased butterflies through the garden, while Elena folded laundry nearby. The 3-year-old often waved whenever she spotted Marcus. He always waved back. Sometimes she brought him dandelions, sometimes crooked drawings filled with smiling stick figures. She treated him exactly as she treated everyone else. Not as a billionaire, not as a man in a wheelchair. Just Mr. Marcus. It became the brightest part of many afternoons. Meanwhile, Cecilia's visits grew increasingly polished. She rarely missed an opportunity to arrive while photographers from charity organizations or business publications happened to be nearby. She pushed his wheelchair during public events, held his hand whenever cameras appeared, spoke beautifully about resilience, about hope, about unconditional love. Everyone admired her devotion. Everyone except Marcus's longtime physical therapist, Dr. Nathan Reeves. One afternoon, after Cecilia abruptly cancelled an additional week of intensive rehabilitation, claiming Marcus needed more emotional rest, Dr. Reeves quietly closed the office door. "I didn't receive that request from you." Marcus looked up. "What request?" "The cancellation." Marcus frowned. "I never cancelled anything." Dr. Reeves hesitated. Then he carefully slid the unsigned paperwork across the desk. Someone had. And unless Marcus could discover who, he was losing far more than therapy sessions. 3 weeks remained before Hartwell Industries' annual Founders Gala, the event where Marcus planned to announce whether he would officially return as executive chairman. The board expected an answer. Shareholders expected certainty. Cecilia expected something else entirely. Marcus simply wanted one more honest chance to stand on his own 2 feet. He had no idea that somewhere inside Hartwell Manor, a 3-year-old child had already overheard the sentence that would change every future waiting ahead. The headquarters of Hartwell Industries occupied an entire city block along Wacker Drive in downtown Chicago. 43 floors of glass and steel. More than 12,000 employees. A company built on one promise that William Hartwell had repeated for decades. People matter more than profits. The day we forget that we deserve to lose both. Marcus had grown up believing those words. After the accident, he slowly realized not everyone else had. His first visit back to headquarters came nearly 10 months after the crash. Employees lined the lobby. Some applauded. Some wiped away tears. Others simply looked, relieved to see him alive. Marcus smiled and thanked every security guard, receptionist, janitor, and assistant who greeted him by name. He remembered nearly all of theirs. That had always been his father's way. Cecilia noticed. She smiled politely, then quietly leaned toward Marcus. "You don't have to exhaust yourself talking to everyone." Marcus answered without looking at her. "They've spent months worrying about me. They're employees. They're people." The conversation ended there. But Cecilia's expression hardened for just an instant before she replaced it with another flawless smile. Inside the executive boardroom, the atmosphere shifted. The directors welcomed Marcus warmly, yet an uncomfortable hesitation lingered beneath every handshake. Not because they doubted his intelligence, because they doubted his body. One investor avoided looking at the wheelchair altogether. Another spoke more slowly than usual, as though Marcus had suffered a brain injury instead of a spinal one. A third addressed several technical questions directly to Cecilia instead of Marcus. She answered them without hesitation. Too quickly. Marcus noticed. So did Harold Benson, Hartwell Industries' oldest board member and William Hartwell's closest surviving friend. Harold remained silent. He simply watched. When the meeting concluded, he caught Marcus alone beside the elevator. "Your father once told me something." Marcus smiled faintly. "He told everybody something." Harold laughed. "True enough." Then his face became serious. "He said that people reveal themselves fastest when they believe you're no longer capable of stopping them." Marcus considered the words all afternoon. Meanwhile, on the 36th floor, Cecilia had already begun revealing herself. Not publicly, never publicly, only behind closed doors. She held private meetings with several senior executives discussing succession plans in case Marcus decided retirement was best for his health. She framed every conversation as concern. Every suggestion sounded reasonable. Every sentence positioned her one step closer to permanent influence. Most people believed her. One man didn't. Daniel Ortiz Hartwell's chief legal officer had worked beside Marcus for 15 years. He noticed something strange. Documents requiring Marcus's approval increasingly arrived with sticky notes suggesting they be routed through Cecilia first to reduce his workload. No company policy required that. Someone had simply started doing it. Daniel quietly removed the notes before delivering the files himself. He said nothing. Not yet. Across town, life inside Hartwell Manor continued much the same. Elena cleaned rooms, prepared guest suites, and helped coordinate household staff. She stayed invisible, because invisible people often heard things others ignored. She also carried a constant fear. If she lost this job, she and Lily would lose the small apartment Hartwell Industries provided to live-in staff. Chicago rent alone would consume nearly every dollar she earned. There were no grandparents nearby. No safety net. Only work. So Elena avoided gossip, avoided conflict, avoided becoming memorable. Lily, however, knew nothing about staying invisible. She wandered the gardens collecting smooth stones. She greeted every gardener by name. She believed every person deserved a smile. Marcus often watched from the library window. Those quiet moments reminded him that kindness required remarkably little effort. One afternoon, Lily wandered into the library while Elena polished silver in the dining room. "I'm looking for my butterfly." Marcus chuckled. "I think butterflies usually stay outside." She nodded seriously. This one forgot. Together, they searched behind bookshelves, curtains, and antique chairs, until Lily suddenly pointed toward the empty drawer where the silver compass had once rested. "Your shiny circle lived there." Marcus froze. "You've seen it." She nodded. The pretty lady picked it up. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. What pretty lady? Lily frowned, trying to remember. The smiling one. Before Marcus could ask another question, Eleanor hurried inside. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Hartwell. Lily, we don't touch things in the library." The child apologized immediately. Marcus simply smiled. "It's all right." He never mentioned the conversation, not because he dismissed it, because children confuse details all the time, or so he told himself. Still, that night he couldn't sleep. The missing compass, the cancelled therapy, the documents being redirected. Tiny pieces. None of them proved anything. Together, they refused to leave his mind. 2 weeks remained until the Founders' Gala. The board would soon vote on temporary governance if Marcus failed to demonstrate he was ready to resume leadership. Cecilia quietly encouraged that timeline. Marcus quietly doubled the intensity of his rehabilitation. Neither realized the other had already begun preparing for the same night. One intended to secure permanent control. The other intended to stand. Only one of them understood how much depended on a single impossible goal. And hidden inside Hartwell Manor, a child was about to hear the one conversation she was never supposed to hear. 2 Mondays before the Founders' Gala, Marcus changed his routine. Instead of arriving at the rehabilitation room at 7:45 a.m., he was already there before sunrise. Outside, a cold April rain streaked across the windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Inside, the only sounds were the soft hum of the body support harness and Marcus's measured breathing. "Again," he told Dr. Nathan Reeves. Nathan looked at the timer. "You've already done 23 attempts. Then let's make it 24. The therapist adjusted the support straps. Marcus planted both feet. His arms trembled against the parallel bars. Every muscle below his waist felt as though it belonged to someone else. "Weight forward," Nathan reminded him quietly. Marcus inhaled, pushed. For nearly 18 seconds, he remained standing. Not because his legs were strong, because his determination was. Then they gave way. Nathan caught him before he hit the floor. "You gained 6 more seconds." Marcus smiled through sweat. Still not enough. For whom, Marcus didn't answer. Because he wasn't trying to satisfy doctors anymore. He was racing against a deadline only he truly understood. The board meeting was in 13 days. The gala followed the night after. If he couldn't convince the directors that he was ready to lead again, temporary executive authority would almost certainly be transferred. Officially, it would be described as a practical business decision. Unofficially, Marcus knew he might never regain full control. That afternoon, Daniel Ortiz arrived carrying a stack of contracts. He closed the library doors before speaking. "I found something." Marcus looked up. What kind of something? Daniel spread several authorization forms across the desk. "These are requests submitted over the last 3 months. Marcus recognized none of them. Every document carried electronic approval codes issued under his executive account. Yet he had never signed them. Most were harmless. Meeting postponements, speaking cancellations, travel restrictions, but together they created a disturbing pattern. Every decision slowly reduced Marcus's public visibility. Every cancelled appearance placed Cecilia in front of cameras instead. Marcus studied the papers silently. "Can you prove who submitted them?" Daniel shook his head. "Not yet." "Then don't accuse anyone. You already know who benefits." "I know who benefits." Marcus folded the papers. "Knowing isn't proving." Daniel nodded. That answer sounded exactly like Marcus's father. Across the hallway, Cecilia paused outside the library door. She couldn't hear every word, only fragments. "Prove. Authorization. Not yet." Her heartbeat quickened. She smiled at a passing employee before calmly walking away. Within the hour, she called someone from her private office. "The timeline needs to move faster." The person on the other end spoke too quietly for anyone else to hear. "No," Cecilia replied. "He suspects something." She ended the call before anyone entered. Meanwhile, Elena noticed another change. Twice that week, she found rehabilitation appointments missing from the household calendar after she clearly remembered entering them. The first time, she assumed she had made a mistake. The second time, she copied the schedule into a small notebook she carried inside her apron pocket. She didn't tell Marcus. Not yet. She simply kept writing. Every cancellation, every unexpected visitor, every unusual phone call requesting his whereabouts. Invisible people survived by paying attention. Late Thursday afternoon, Marcus wheeled himself into the garden. Lily sat beneath a flowering magnolia tree arranging smooth stones into tiny circles. "Mr. Marcus." She held up a daisy. "This one's crooked." He accepted it with a smile. "So am I." She giggled. "No." She carefully straightened the bent stem with both little hands. "You're just fixing." Marcus stared at the flower. Such a simple sentence. Yet somehow, it reached a place inside him that months of motivational speeches never had. Not broken. Fixing. That evening, he rolled into his father's old workshop behind the manor garage. Very few people ever entered the room anymore. Dust covered the workbench. Old blueprints remained pinned to the walls. The scent of cedar and machine oil still lingered in the air. Marcus unlocked a narrow cabinet, hidden behind shelves of woodworking tools. Inside rested a small fireproof box. Without hesitation, he placed Daniel's copied documents inside. Then he added something else. A handwritten notebook. His father's original journal. He wasn't hiding it from thieves. He was protecting it until the right moment. As he locked the cabinet again, he heard footsteps outside. Not heavy. Careful. Someone had approached the workshop, then stopped. Marcus waited. Silence. When he finally opened the door, no one stood there. Only faint footprints disappearing across the wet stone path. Someone had been watching. The next morning, another blow arrived. Dr. Nathan Reeves entered the therapy room carrying an envelope. His face had lost all color. "I've been reassigned." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean the rehabilitation center received instructions from your medical representative?" "I don't have a medical representative." Nathan hesitated. "The paperwork lists Cecilia Ashcroft." Marcus felt the room grow impossibly still. For the first time, a clue was no longer merely suspicious. Someone had acted. Someone had used Cecilia's authority to interfere directly with his recovery. But before Marcus could confront her, a far greater danger was already unfolding upstairs. Hidden behind a half-open office door, 3-year-old Lily had wandered after a paper butterfly, and she was about to overhear the one sentence Cecilia could never afford to let anyone repeat. Lily wasn't trying to eavesdrop. She was chasing the paper butterfly that had drifted down the hallway after slipping from one of the decorative arrangements. It fluttered beneath the slightly open door of Cecilia's private sitting room. The little girl bent down to retrieve it. Then she heard laughter. Not happy laughter. The kind adults used when they believed no one important was listening. "I'm telling you," Cecilia said. "If Marcus starts walking again before the gala, everything becomes complicated." Another woman laughed. "So make sure he doesn't." "Oh, please. I don't have to do anything dramatic." Cecilia's voice remained calm. "I've already slowed his rehabilitation enough." "But what if the therapy actually works?" A brief silence followed. Then Cecilia answered with chilling confidence. "I honestly hope his legs never recover." She chuckled softly. "A man in a wheelchair needs someone to manage everything. The board sees me as the stable choice. Once we're married, the transition becomes effortless." The other woman asked quietly, "And if he discovers what you've been doing?" "He won't." "You're certain? He trusts people too easily." Lily didn't understand words like rehabilitation. She didn't understand corporate control. She only understood one sentence. "I hope his legs never recover." The little girl's smile disappeared. She hugged the paper butterfly tightly against her chest and ran. She nearly collided with Elena outside the laundry room. "Mommy." Elena knelt immediately. "What happened?" Lily looked frightened. "The pretty lady said Mr. Marcus shouldn't walk." Elena's heart skipped. "What do you mean, the smiling lady?" Lily struggled to remember every word. She said, "She hopes his legs stay broken." Elena's face turned pale. Children imagined things. Children misunderstood conversations. She wanted to believe that. She desperately wanted to believe that. But Lily had never invented stories. Never. Eleanor gently held her daughter's shoulders. "Sweetheart, you mustn't repeat that." "Why?" "Because grown-up conversations can be confusing." Lily frowned. But it made Mr. Marcus sad. Eleanor hadn't said Marcus's name. The child had. A cold feeling settled deep inside her chest. That evening she debated telling Marcus. Again and again she walked toward the library. Again and again she turned back. What if Lily misunderstood? What if accusing Cecilia destroyed everything? Who would believe a housekeeper? Or a 3-year-old child? Over one of Chicago's most admired philanthropists. By Friday afternoon, the annual Founders Gala dominated every conversation at Hartwell Manor. Florists arrived. Security teams inspected entrances. Television crews requested camera positions. The board would gather. Investors would attend. Chicago's wealthiest families would fill the ballroom. Marcus spent nearly every spare hour training. Nathan, despite his reassignment, quietly continued volunteering after work without billing a single hour. "I can still help as a friend," he said. Marcus nodded gratefully. During one exhausting session, it happened. Marcus stood, unaided. 1 second, then 2, then 5. Nathan's eyes widened. "Marcus." 7 seconds. 8. Marcus took one trembling step, then another. His legs collapsed. He struck the padded floor with a heavy thud. Pain shot through his hips. Nathan rushed toward him. Marcus closed his eyes. Not because he had fallen, because he had tasted hope. Now he wanted more. Across the hall, Cecilia watched through the narrow window in the therapy room door. Her expression remained perfectly composed. Only her clenched jaw betrayed her panic. That night, she made another phone call. "We're out of time." A pause. No. Another pause. He took steps. Silence. Then Cecilia spoke 4 words that changed everything. "Tomorrow ends this." Saturday arrived. The Founders' Gala. Black luxury cars lined the entrance of the Grand Regency Hotel. Reporters crowded behind velvet barriers. Inside, crystal chandeliers illuminated hundreds of guests dressed in tailored tuxedos and designer gowns. Marcus wore a midnight blue suit for the first time since the accident. He carried the cracked silver compass inside his jacket pocket. He still hadn't found out who returned it, but somehow, holding it made him feel his father walking beside him. As Marcus entered the ballroom, applause erupted. Board members smiled. Business leaders shook his hand. Cameras flashed relentlessly. Cecilia glided through the crowd like the perfect future Mrs. Hartwell. Every smile measured, every gesture graceful, everything unfolding exactly as she had planned. Then Marcus quietly asked for a microphone. The ballroom gradually fell silent. No one knew what he intended to announce. Neither did Cecilia. She assumed he would officially step back from day-to-day leadership. Instead, Marcus placed both hands firmly on the wheelchair. The room held its breath. He began pushing himself upward, 1 inch, then another. His arms trembled violently. His legs shook beneath him. Several guests instinctively moved forward. Cecilia reached for his shoulder. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "please don't embarrass yourself." Her hand pressed down, hard. The exact moment the entire ballroom watched. The exact moment Lily slipped free from Elena's hand. The exact moment the little girl walked toward Marcus, holding the cracked silver compass. And before anyone could stop her, she stood beside the billionaire, looked into his eyes, and whispered the sentence that froze his soul. "Your fiancée said she doesn't want you to walk again." Nobody else heard the words. Not yet. But truth had finally entered the room. Marcus never took his eyes off Lily. The ballroom around him blurred into a haze of crystal lights and expensive tuxedos. Only the little girl remained perfectly clear. She held the cracked silver compass with both tiny hands, as though it were the most important treasure in the world. Marcus accepted it carefully. His fingers trembled. Not because of weakness, because dozens of small, confusing moments from the past several months suddenly aligned into one terrifying picture. Cecilia forced a gentle laugh. "I'm so sorry," she said to the guests. "Children hear the funniest things." A ripple of polite laughter spread through the ballroom. Exactly what she wanted. Turn the moment into a harmless misunderstanding. Marcus looked down at Lily. "What did you hear?" The little girl answered without hesitation. The smiling lady. She pointed directly at Cecilia. She told another lady she hopes your legs never get better. Silence. The orchestra stopped playing. A champagne glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered against the marble floor. Cecilia's smile barely moved. Marcus. She sighed as though exhausted. She's 3 years old. I know. Children imagine conversations. Marcus nodded once. They do. Cecilia relaxed slightly. For a moment she believed the danger had passed. Then a quiet voice came from the back of the ballroom. She isn't imagining this one. Every head turned. Elaine stood near the entrance, her face pale, her hands shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. I tried to convince myself Lily misunderstood. She swallowed hard. I truly did. Cecilia's expression darkened. You should be careful about making accusations. I'm not accusing you. Elena looked directly at Marcus. I'm telling him why I stayed silent. She explained how Lily had run to her after overhearing the conversation, how she had begged her daughter not to repeat it, how fear of losing her job had kept her quiet. I was wrong. Her voice cracked. I should have told you immediately. Several board members exchanged uneasy glances. Still, Cecilia remained composed. A frightened employee repeating a toddler's misunderstanding is hardly evidence. You're right. Marcus spoke calmly. It isn't. He reached into his jacket pocket. The cracked silver compass rested in his palm. He slowly held it up. You recognize this? Cecilia's heartbeat quickened. It's your father's compass. It disappeared. She answered instantly. I'm sure it was misplaced. Marcus nodded. So was I. He turned toward Daniel Ortiz. Daniel. The chief legal officer stepped forward, carrying a slim envelope. I asked Daniel to verify something yesterday. Daniel removed several printed security photographs. The study hallway, the rehabilitation wing, the private archive. 3 enlarged images appeared on the ballroom screens. Each showed Cecilia entering restricted areas alone over the previous month. Gasps spread across the room. Daniel continued. The timestamps match every cancelled therapy authorization submitted under Mr. Hartwell's executive credentials. Cecilia interrupted immediately. That proves nothing. It proves access. Daniel remained calm, but not intent. For a brief second, Cecilia smiled again. Exactly. Not intent. Then another voice interrupted. I can prove intent. Dr. Nathan Reeves walked into the ballroom still wearing his Rehabilitation Center identification badge. He had come directly from work. I was instructed to reduce Marcus's treatment schedule. He looked directly at Cecilia. Your office told the medical center that Mr. Hartwell wanted fewer sessions because recovery was causing emotional distress. Marcus stared at Cecilia. I never said that. Nathan nodded. I know. Cecilia folded her arms. You're mistaken. Nathan calmly removed his phone. I thought you might say that. He pressed play. The ballroom filled with Cecilia's unmistakable voice. Dr. Reeves Marcus doesn't need to know we're shortening the program. Tell him insurance changed the schedule if necessary. No one moved. No one breathed. The recording lasted only 19 seconds. It didn't explain everything. It didn't mention money. It didn't mention control. It didn't need to. Everyone understood. The emotional proof wasn't complicated. It was her own voice. Across the ballroom, Harold Benson slowly removed his glasses. I've known the Hartwell family for 41 years. He looked at Cecilia with profound disappointment. William always feared one thing. Not bankruptcy, not competition. He feared someone would convince Marcus that accepting less than his full strength was somehow love. The room remained completely still. Cecilia's confidence finally broke. She stepped toward Marcus. "You don't understand. I sacrificed everything for you. I stayed. I defended you." Marcus quietly shook his head. "You defended the version of me that needed you." His voice never rose. It didn't have to. "You weren't afraid I'd never walk again." He looked directly into her eyes. "You were afraid I might." Those 8 words echoed through the silent ballroom. Several board members lowered their heads. Others looked away from Cecilia entirely. She reached desperately toward Marcus. "You can't end our engagement because of a child and 1 recording." Marcus answered with extraordinary calm. "I'm ending it because I finally know which part was real." He removed the engagement ring, placed it gently beside the cracked silver compass on the podium. "I begged life for another chance to stand." He paused. "I won't spend that second chance kneeling to a lie." No applause came, only silence. The kind of silence that permanently changes reputations. Harold Benson stood first. As chairman of the governance committee, he looked toward the remaining directors. "I move that Cecilia Ashcroft be removed immediately from every advisory role connected to Hartwell Industries pending a full internal investigation." Second, Daniel spoke without hesitation. Third, another director answered, then another. The vote was unanimous. Security quietly approached Cecilia, not aggressively, professionally. She looked around the ballroom, searching for support. None came. The cameras that had spent months celebrating her devotion now captured something entirely different. Consequences, real ones. Marcus ignored every lens pointed toward him. Instead, he turned to Elena. "You protected your daughter. I'm sorry I waited. So am I." He smiled gently. "But you came." Then he knelt as far as he could beside Lily's height. "You were very brave." The little girl touched his hand. "I just wanted you to get better." Marcus closed his fingers around the cracked compass. "So do I." Then, with hundreds of witnesses watching, Marcus gripped the podium, pressed both feet against the marble floor, and slowly, painfully, stood. Not perfectly, not for long, but completely on his own. Nobody applauded. Many were crying too hard to remember how. The first person Marcus reached toward wasn't a board member, wasn't an investor. It was the little girl who had refused to let the truth stay hidden. The headlines the next morning surprised almost everyone, not because they mentioned Cecilia Ashcroft, because they barely did. Instead, every major Chicago newspaper carried nearly the same photograph. A billionaire, standing on trembling legs, holding the hand of a 3-year-old girl. The caption simply read, "Truth helped him stand." Within 48 hours, Hartwell Industries announced the results of an emergency board session. Cecilia's engagement to Marcus Hartwell was officially over. She was removed from every advisory committee, stripped of all consulting authority, and permanently barred from representing the company in any public or corporate capacity, while an independent investigation reviewed the unauthorized use of executive credentials. The investigation uncovered far more than anyone expected. Therapy appointments had been cancelled, executive appearances had been quietly declined, medical correspondence had been intercepted. Several staff members admitted they had followed Cecilia's instructions because they believed she was acting on Marcus's behalf. No criminal conspiracy emerged, no dramatic courtroom battle followed. The truth was simpler. She had built her influence one reasonable decision at a time, and that made the betrayal even harder to forgive. Marcus never spoke publicly to criticize her. When reporters crowded outside Hartwell Manor asking for comments, he answered with only one sentence. Recovery begins the moment the lies stop making your decisions. After that, he refused to say another word about Cecilia. He had spent too many months losing his future. He wasn't about to lose his peace as well. Rehabilitation became his full-time job. Every sunrise found him back inside the therapy room with Dr. Nathan Reeves. 1 step became 3. 3 became 10. 10 became the length of the parallel bars. There were setbacks. Painful days. Frustrating mornings when his legs refused to cooperate. But no one shortened his appointments anymore. No one quietly erased his progress. 6 months after the gala, Marcus walked slowly and with a cane through the front doors of Hartwell Industries. This time he refused the private executive entrance. Instead, he entered through the main lobby. Employees stopped working, not because a billionaire had arrived, because they knew how hard each step had been. The applause started with the overnight cleaning crew, then the reception desk, then the engineers, then the accountants. Finally, the entire lobby echoed with clapping that lasted nearly 2 full minutes. Marcus smiled, slightly embarrassed. He raised one hand. All right. Everyone laughed. I still have a meeting to get to. Some victories didn't need speeches. Meanwhile, life changed quietly for Elena and Lily. Marcus offered Elena a promotion as Director of Household Operations. She accepted only after asking one question. Are you sure people won't think I received this because of what happened? Marcus smiled. I'm offering it because you've already been doing the job for months. Her salary nearly doubled. For the first time since becoming a single mother, she signed a lease for a small home of her own instead of relying on employee housing. Lily chose the bedroom painted yellow. She insisted butterflies belong there. Marcus visited often, never with bodyguards, never with photographers. Sometimes he simply brought coloring books, sometimes ice cream, sometimes absolutely nothing except time. One autumn afternoon, nearly a year after the gala, Lily climbed onto a bench beside him overlooking Lake Michigan. She noticed the familiar silver compass resting in his hand. The shiny circle came home. Marcus nodded. It did. The crack is still there. He smiled. So is mine. She studied him carefully. Shouldn't somebody fix it? Marcus gently turned the compass over in his palm. His father's initials remained engraved on the back. He thought about replacing the glass many times. He never did. No, he answered softly. Some things aren't beautiful because they're perfect. They're beautiful because they remind us we kept going. Lily seemed satisfied with that answer. She leaned her head against his arm while gulls drifted across the water. For several quiet minutes, neither of them spoke. The wind carried the scent of the lake. The afternoon sun reflected from the cracked glass. The compass still pointed north, just as it always had. Marcus finally understood what his father meant all those years ago. People lose direction long before they lose hope. Sometimes, all it takes to find the way again is one honest voice that refuses to stay silent. If this story touched your heart, what would you have done in Marcus's place? Would you have trusted the warning of a small child? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe truth, courage and quiet dignity will always matter, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us why integrity is worth protecting.